The crown rested gently, yet its weight bent the soul. Gold touched the forehead, but sorrow touched the heart first. Silk flowed like a quiet river, hiding storms beneath its shine. Every jewel knew a secret, every gem had heard a sigh. They saw a king, they never saw the child inside him. They bowed to the throne, never to the wounds beneath it. Royal robes learned the language of silence, stitched with patience, lined with restraint. Smiles were rehearsed like ceremonies, perfect, punctual, and painless to watch. But behind the mirror of dignity, tears waited for the night. The palace echoed with footsteps, yet none reached the heart's locked door. Laughter was allowed in halls, grief was exiled to shadows. He learned early that power must never tremble, so he trained his voice to stay calm. Even when the soul was screaming, history would write victories, never the cost of staying strong. They praised the posture, not the pressure holding it upright. The crown shone brightest at sunrise, when the eyes were darkest with sleeplessness. Every order given was a prayer disguised as command, every decision carved another line into the chest. Royal blood does not run free, it walks in disciplined circles. Love was measured, trust was rationed. To care too deeply was considered a weakness, so affection learned to whisper, and longing learned to kneel. The throne demanded loyalty, but never offered comfort. Silence became a loyal companion, faithful, heavy, and understanding. He dressed pain in elegance, and sorrow in tradition. The world applauded the performance, unaware of the bleeding beneath velvet. At banquets, glasses rose high, while the heart stayed seated low. Music played to mask the sound of breaking inside. Every night the crown was removed, yet its mark remained. Mirrors reflected royalty, but not exhaustion. He spoke of justice, while begging God for rest. The people saw certainty, they never saw fear learning to breathe. Power stood tall on the outside, fragile on the inside. Promises were carved in stone, regrets written in water. He learned the art of carrying storms without rain. Royal clothes never wrinkled, but the soul folded quietly. He walked among many, yet lived alone. Trust was a locked room, with memories as guards. When he smiled, the nation felt safe. When he wept, only the night bore witness. Pain became disciplined, trained not to show itself. Grief wore perfume, so no one could smell its depth. The throne never asked, "How are you?" It only demanded, "Stand firm." And so he stood on cracked foundations of endurance. He learned to turn wounds into wisdom and heartbreak into policy. Mercy came easily for others, rarely for himself. He forgave the world daily, yet struggled to forgive fate. Royal clothes shimmered under light, absorbing darkness quietly. Each step forward was paid with something unseen. The crown never fell, but something inside did. He carried generations on his shoulders and buried his own desires beneath them. Dreams were postponed, then forgotten politely. Love waited patiently, often waiting alone. His prayers were simple. Let me endure. Strength became habit, not choice. The world called him blessed, not knowing the price of blessing. Royalty taught him how to hide without lying, how to smile without joy, how to rule while being ruled by duty. Pain learned to bow, to walk behind him unseen. It followed him into meetings, into ceremonies, into history. And when statues were built, they carved only the posture, not the weight. The pain remained loyal, never exposing him, hidden perfectly in royal clothes. Time moved forward, but the ache learned to stay. Years added wisdom and quietly multiplied scars. The crown aged with grace, the heart aged with endurance. He learned that loneliness can exist even in applause, that cheers can be loud and still not reach the soul. Every celebration ended the same, with silence waiting at the door. Royal corridors grew familiar, yet never felt like home. He mastered the language of pauses, the meaning hidden between words. What he did not say became heavier than speeches. The people saw decisions, not the sleepless nights behind them. They saw authority, not doubt kneeling in prayer. The throne demanded perfection, never humanity, so he folded his fears neatly, like letters never sent. Hope visited occasionally, always leaving quietly. Trust became selective, love became careful. He loved deeply, but from a guarded distance. Affection learned protocol, emotion learned restraint. Even joy wore limits, never overstaying its welcome. The crown heard everything, yet answered nothing. It never asked if the burden was too much, only reminded him that collapse was not an option. He carried smiles for others and wounds for himself. Royal clothes absorbed tears, never letting them fall. Pain learned to breathe softly, so no one would notice. He walked through history, like a shadow cast by duty. The weight never lessened. He simply grew stronger beneath it. Strength became his inheritance, suffering his silent legacy. He ruled nations, but could not rule destiny. Time carved lines on his face, each one a story untold. The mirror aged him slowly, truthfully, without mercy. Still he stood, because royal pain does not ask for relief. It asks for dignity. And so the pain remained, hidden, loyal, wrapped in royal clothes. Seasons changed outside the palace. Inside, the same winter stayed. Spring bloomed in gardens, but never quite reached his chest. He watched flowers rise and fall, learning how beauty survives briefly. The sun bowed every evening, teaching him the art of retreat. Yet he never truly rested, even when night covered the crown. Royal sleep is shallow, guarded by thoughts and consequences. Dreams came dressed as memories, often leaving as questions. He wondered who he might have been, without the weight of inheritance. A simpler man, perhaps, one allowed to fail openly. But destiny had already chosen, and choice became a luxury. The throne taught him patience, but never peace. He learned that responsibility is a form of endless prayer. Each promise made to the people cost him a piece of himself. He gave it willingly because duty demanded generosity. Sacrifice became routine, so common it felt invisible. The world mistook silence for strength, never knowing silence was survival. Royal clothes never questioned him. They only concealed. They hid trembling hands and a heart learning to endure. In crowds, he felt distant. In solitude, exposed. Loneliness followed protocol too. Never disruptive, always present. He spoke of hope publicly, searched for it privately. Faith became a quiet companion, sitting beside him in the dark. Sometimes he asked God nothing, just sat and breathed, because even prayers can feel heavy when repeated too often. The crown reflected light, but never reflected understanding. It knew his posture, not his pain. Still, he wore it with grace, because grace was expected. Royal dignity demanded elegance. Even in suffering, he mastered the art of breaking silently, of rebuilding alone, of smiling with precision. The pain aged with him, growing wise, growing calm. It no longer screamed, it simply existed, a loyal shadow, never leaving his side. And when history spoke his name, it spoke of strength and honor. It never spoke of nights where tears fell without witnesses. It never wrote about the heart that bled without permission. Statues would stand tall, carved in stone and certainty. But stone cannot feel what flesh survives. The pain knew this truth, so it stayed hidden, faithful till the end, wrapped carefully, respectfully. In royal clothes. As years deepened their color, the crown learned his heartbeat. It rested where thoughts gathered, where questions lined up silently. He became older than his age, wiser than his reflection allowed. Time did not ask permission, it simply kept carving. Every wrinkle was a victory survived, every sigh a war, unrecorded. He learned that ruling others is easier than ruling oneself, that silence can be louder than rebellion, that obedience to destiny is its own kind of courage. Royal halls remembered his footsteps, even when people forgot his sacrifices. Names changed, faces changed, expectations never did. The throne outlived friendships, outlasted comfort. People came seeking answers, never asking about the cost. He gave solutions generously and kept his exhaustion private. Pain matured into wisdom, wisdom matured into restraint. He no longer asked why, only how long. The night became familiar, an old friend with honest conversations. Stars listened patiently, never interrupting. Sometimes he envied the moon, allowed to disappear and return. Royalty offered no such mercy. He watched children laugh freely, wondering when laughter became guarded. At what moment joy learned to seek approval. His heart still felt deeply, it simply felt quietly. Love still existed, but it walked barefoot, careful not to make noise. Trust was measured by time, not words. He learned to read eyes, because lips often lied politely. Every oath taken added another invisible chain. Yet he wore those chains like ornaments of honor, because abandoning duty was never an option. The world admired the crown, not the neck bearing it. Royal clothes grew heavier, stitched with years of expectation. Still he stood straight, a posture perfected through pain. He became the calm during storms he never created, the shield for conflicts he never desired. History would praise his steadiness, never his endurance. Songs would celebrate victories, never the losses inside him. But pain did not complain. It understood its role, stayed loyal, disciplined, silent, hidden where only God could see. And on days when faith felt thin, he reminded himself, some wounds are meant not to be shown, but to be carried. Some pain is not weakness, but proof of responsibility. So he walked forward, aged, composed, unbroken, wearing strength like armor and pain like tradition, still hidden, still breathing, still wrapped carefully in royal clothes. There came a day when the mirror hesitated. It reflected a ruler, but questioned the man. His eyes carried archives, libraries of moments never shared. Victory and loss sat together in his gaze. He had learned to forgive quickly, because resentment wasted strength. Yet some memories refused release. They stayed folded in the chest, creased but intact. Royal life taught him how to move forward without closure. Some answers never arrived. Some doors remained ceremonial, meant to exist, never to open. He accepted this, as one accepts weather, without protest, without illusion. The palace grew quieter with time, not emptier, just calmer. Noise left, truth stayed. He learned which voices mattered, which echoes were merely tradition. Power aged him gently on the outside, harshly on the inside. Yet something softened too, a quiet compassion, born from knowing pain firsthand. He ruled with steadiness, but felt with depth. He understood suffering without being told. He recognized silence as a form of courage, and weakness as a luxury others could afford. There were moments, brief, unannounced, when peace visited, in dawn prayers, in solitary walks, in the hush between breaths. In those moments, the crown felt lighter, not gone, just understood. He realized then that pain was not his enemy. It was his teacher. It taught humility beneath grandeur, empathy beneath authority. It reminded him that greatness without mercy is hollow. So he wore pain with respect, never resentment. He let it shape him, not harden him. Royal clothes continued to hide the ache, but they also carried wisdom now. What once wounded, now guided. What once broke, now strengthened. The pain changed from burden to testimony, from secret to silent honor. And though the world would never know its name, it lived honestly within him, still unseen, still dignified, still wrapped, not in shame, but but in purpose hidden, yes, but no longer alone.